Hello, and welcome to the Data or Die podcast. I am Richard Carey, the host, and today we are talking to Rick Shaw, who is the founder, CEO, and Connecting the Dots officer at Awarity. So thank you for joining us, Rick. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks, Richard. Glad to be here.
And to get started, Rick, can you tell us a little bit about Awarity? You guys have an awesome mission. And can you tell us a little bit about the company and your mission?
Absolutely, yeah. We're very focused on public safety, I guess, in the big picture, and the connecting the dots part has a play in this, just because when we start connecting all of the indicators, these previous indicators, with all the resources that we have out there to help keep us all safe, right? That's the goal. So we have been focusing on this now for a long time, just because it's just a passion of mine. It started with really child safety, but it's everyone's safety, public safety. But basically, I was really trying to figure out why a lot of these bad things keep happening out there, even though the quote unquote dots were there, the data was there, right? And so I guess that's how the connecting the dots officer kind of thing came along. Was that we needed to really start connecting all these dots and all this data so we can actually take action. So that's really how we got started. And then since that time, I've been doing research into really thousands of, incidents and tragedies and things like that, to better understand the post-incident reports, to better understand why they weren't prevented. And so I've spent thousands and thousands of hours researching to really go down and figure out, okay, yeah, the information was there, but where was it? And why wasn't it connected? Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. And again, we're joking about this before, that this is we're rebranding the podcast a little bit to the Data or Die podcast. And this is like a weird anomaly that we're talking today about how to use data to prevent death. So this is really cool. And that's awesome. And maybe tell us a little bit, Rick, about how you came to become the founder of Awarity. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I'll go all the way back to sixth grade, I guess, which was a very long dang time ago, because you can see I got gray going on here. But in sixth grade, there was a classmate, and she was in a different class. She was in the special needs class, and our class was separate. But kids would always bully her and things like that, and she would have seizures, and it was really scary for her and for everybody else too, I guess, except for some of the bullies. But I was a little guy. I'm a little guy now, but I was a really little guy then. But I kind of stepped in, and I call her MJ, but I kind of stepped in and started, being a buffer, I guess, between some of that. And then I got some friends to help, got my teacher to help, and we were able to kind of protect MJ from some of the stuff that was going on, because it was just not right. And I guess that goes back to my first preventer days. I call it first preventers, because we were trying to prevent bad things from happening, right? And so that's kind of where it got started. And then, real quick side note is that I call it return on prevention. Return on prevention is huge, because ever since then, now initially it was a little weird, because she would want to give me hugs and kisses in sixth grade. That was kind of strange, or awkward, I guess, maybe. But I recently just had a 40-plus reunion, and MJ was there, and she gave me a big hug and told me she loved me. And I'm just telling you, the return on prevention is so much better than return on regret. And so over the years, that has inspired me. And then my background really before Awarity was in cybersecurity. I was a white hat hacker, a good guy hacker. And it was all about discovering holes before the bad guys could find them, and then we could patch them for our clients and things like that. So that kind of, I guess, played into it also. And then when 1999, when Columbine happened, I went down the rabbit hole, basically saying, okay, how did this happen? And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and then, unfortunately, hundreds and hundreds of other events have happened. And so I've just been researching ever since then. But it kind of goes back to sixth grade, I guess, and really understanding how return on prevention, when you take action, you can get return on prevention versus return on regret. And that's kind of inspired me the whole way through.
Wow, I love that story. And wow, this sparks a bunch of questions for me. And you can I'm just telling you can you don't have to answer any of my questions if they're not good questions. But
No worries.
and no, I really love this. And even today, heard news because this is going to date us. This might not come out for a couple of weeks, but as we're recording this, there was an incident today and a school shooting today. I'd be curious just to get your take on this and
Yeah, unfortunately, it's another sad day for schools just because we did have another school shooting today. It was in Madison, Wisconsin, at a Christian school. And it was a K-12 school, not a big school, private school. Um, from what we know at this time, there was a student that was a shooter, a teacher was killed, and another student was killed. Two students, I think, from what we know, are in critical condition. So, it's way too early to make any comments about the motive or anything like that. But it's going to be another one of those stories that I'll be studying to really try to understand why and if there were pre-incident indicators. Because usually, almost always, we read or learn after the fact that these individuals, I call them at-risk individuals, but I just mean that they have a grievance. And for whatever reason, this person had a grievance, and they took a gun to school, shot people. We don't know why, but again, it's just another reminder. And then the other thing too, I will just comment. I watched the press release after the shooting, and we've really seen. And I think we're starting to really see this movement from, the first responders did a great job. They were there quickly, the law enforcement and everybody else. But we just can't respond fast enough. And they were really talking about how it's so important to prevent these individuals because they usually do give off some sort of indicators concerning behaviors, red flags, warning signs, things like that. But how can we use that information, that intelligence, that data to really help us to get ahead of the curve? And again, that's what I'll be studying once the information comes out with this. But again, it's just another horrible reminder. And the people in Madison, they're really feeling the pain, and they're just like, enough is enough. The police chief said that exact thing. Enough is enough. We have to start preventing these. And so we're really starting to see, I think, a movement from, we can't just put locks and cameras and have our first responders ready. We have to do something more.
yeah, and maybe could you describe to us, like, if this school would have had Awarity, for example, like what kind of data points would you be looking at, and who would you be sending that data to in order to help prevent a situation like this?
Yeah, great question. And that's really from from the 25 plus years of research we've been doing. We can see patterns and trends. We can see I call them blind spots. A lot of these blind spots, these schools don't know they have. So for example, a lot of schools will tell students to tell a trusted adult if they are having problems, whether it's bullying or depression or drugs or whatever it might be. And the trusted adults, they certainly don't do it on purpose, but they become a silo in a lot of times because they're aware of this information, but nobody else is. They may have talked to the student. They thought that they addressed the problem. They did what they could do, but they don't know always what goes on in the next classroom, the bus ride, on social media, all those kind of things. And so what we end up seeing almost always, and I'm not saying it's going to happen with this one because we don't know yet, but thousands of others before this, the trusted adults knew something, parents knew something, other students knew something, counselors knew something, law enforcement knew something. I mean, like Parkland, law enforcement had been to that shooter's house over 40 times, but the school didn't know it. So it's things like that. And so what we do with Awarity is, and we've learned this through the research, is that we have to take all this data. And it's not just a matter of throwing it together in a spreadsheet or a database or something like that. We actually have to bring it in, funnel it, share it with the right people. So bullying might get shared, a bullying incident report might get shared with one group of people, whereas weapons might get shared with another group of people. But the two different teams have to be able to see that, and I'll use my name just as an example, A report came in on Rick because he was bullying. A report came in on Rick because he was talking about guns. A report came in on Rick because maybe I used to be bullied and now I'm the bully. So there's maybe some escalation there. It's all this data when you start having that clearer picture of what's going on in Rick's world. But a lot of times what we see after the fact is, again, all this information was scattered. There's so many different instant reporting options, for example. There's federal, see something, say something. State, see something, say something. There's local, see something, say something. There's school websites, all kinds of different ways. But none of those are connected. And so, again, those are silos too. So people are reporting things a lot of times, but it's going into a silo. And so they don't have the tools to bring it all together and share it with all the privacy concerns for HIPAA, and I won't get into all the compliance stuff, but I'm just saying it's a barrier. But we solve those issues too. So we're really, if you think of us a great big funnel, we're bringing in all this different data, funneling it to the right people who can see the bigger picture so they can actually help and intervene with these at-risk individuals sooner rather than waiting for a crime to happen, which is when the first responders step in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I used the term a little bit earlier, first preventers, because we need to have first preventers getting involved before the first responders have to get involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like specifically, what are some of the gaps? Because you mentioned like privacy as well, and I'm not familiar with all the privacy laws related to these types of see something, say something type of things, but I imagine it's pretty stringent on who can even see this information. And so even, are there gaps where there are people who do have the legal right to see that information? They should see this information, but they're just not getting it?
Correct. That's exactly what's happening. And I won't go too deep in the woods or the weeds because it'll get boring. But with privacy laws, there's things called FERPA. There's things called HIPAA. FERPA is for education. HIPAA is for like our health records and things like that. There are, certain like counselors, mental health, there's things that they can't necessarily, quote unquote, can't share with everyone. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's true. And they can't share it via email. That's true. Because of the, you're just not encrypted and things like that. But there's no such thing as in FERPA or HIPAA that says you can't share it. And so there's some misinformation out there. Sometimes even law enforcement will say, I can't share that information because of investigation or whatever. Well, that's true. They can't share it in a press release or a press conference, but they can absolutely share it with the school. And that's where we do the funneling part. It's so important to do the funneling part where it needs to be, information needs to be securely shared and routed and then encrypted and kept secure, but with the team members. So if there's 4 of them, 5 of them, 10 of them, whatever the school decides, those are the quote unquote authorized people, the team, who can receive that. And it could be a combination of law enforcement, legal, principal, mental health, counselors, whatever team they want, okay? But that's what's not happening today because people don't know how to get the information to these people without causing compliance issues, privacy issues, security issues, leakage issues, where the information gets leaked out, confidentiality, things like that. But that's what our platform has been designed to do so that people can trust it and know that if they put the information into the funnel, it's only going to go to the right people at that point. And they don't even have to know who the right people are because most people don't know who the right people are. That's the other problem. It's like, I have information, but who do I tell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fascinating. And, when I first started learning about Awarity, my mind started thinking of like, oh, there's some like potential like Big Brother type of issues here. But actually in talking to you, I think there are pretty clear laws actually to delineate like what you can and should do with the data versus not. And even above that, there's just all these gaps, that there's still a lot of room. And I think you mentioned to me before that one of the biggest issues is like people don't report because it doesn't get acted upon.
Yeah, that's a great
not
point.
To the right place. It's not that they're worried about Big Brother. It's like they really care about somebody and they want to get the information to the right person, and it's just still not getting there.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, we were a little surprised by that when we did surveys with thousands and thousands of students where we thought the answer would be that they didn't want to snitch, because that's the common thought process, is that kids don't, snitches get stitches, or whatever you want to say. Kids told us that that was not the issue. The kids told us that when they reported it, the reason they quit reporting was because, like you just said, nothing happened. And so, like, again, none of it was really probably quote unquote on purpose. It's just that they told a trusted adult and they got stuck in a silo. They used an instant reporting system and they got stuck in a silo. They did what they were supposed to do, but the gaps between, there's so many gaps and blind spots between where the information comes in and how it gets to the right people over here. Those gaps and blind spots in between is what the problem is. And that's where over and over and over again. I mean, whether it was a school-related thing, a workplace violence thing, or a 9/11, federal agency thing, it was all the same. There were reports all over the place. It just wasn't getting through all the gaps and silos and disconnects to get to the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, people do want to help. We use a thing called the butterfly effect. One small thing can save a life, save a friend. And, a lot of schools that went from a tip line, because people kind of look at that as a snitch line, but they went from a tip line to the butterfly effect, the number of instant reports went way up. That's good, because that means people, they want to help. They were coming forward. They were starting to say, hey, this person's struggling with being bullied, or this person's struggling with talking about suicide, or this person's, whatever. Because it's how we care for each other. It's well-being. People want to help, but if action doesn't happen, they're just going to stop coming forward. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. I'm not going to say it's a kids thing. It's adults too.
Yep. Yeah, interesting. And changing gears just a little bit, I'm curious about what are your biggest obstacles to getting this implemented at a school? Either, is it them not trusting that it works? Like, what are the obstacles? Like, say at a university, for example, because this to me is like an absolute no-brainer for a university to use something if it's going to save one life. Like, it seems like cost should not be an issue, but maybe it is. I don't know.
No, it's kind of that ounce of prevention and a pound to cure thing. It costs way less than having a lawsuit. Put it that way, because those can be millions or tens or hundreds of millions of dollars we've seen so far. But it's also costs less than like the security stuff that's being in place right now. Now, I'm not saying it's instead of. I'm just saying as a comparison. Yeah, I would say the biggest pushback is really the lack of understanding. People don't believe it can work. They haven't thought about looking kind of forward looking. We've been programmed for so long, or conditioned, I'll say, for so long, that we have to secure things. So the security cameras, the alarms, the locks, all those kind of things. And again, I'm not saying we don't need those, we do, but yet at the same time, we have to realize that schools are open. Workplaces are usually open. I mean, they're open campuses. They're not maybe completely open, although many are. Mm-hmm. But the thing is those kinds of security things work really well after hours, right? Or they work really well in a prison where you're trying to keep people inside. They don't always keep people out very well. Especially in an open place. A prison's different, but a school is different than a prison, obviously. So that's kind of one of the problems we have, is that there's this conditioning that we have to put all the security in place, and we have to have all these first responders ready to respond. We just haven't really thought much about over the years, and that's why I'm trying to change, is to say, okay, how can we get on the pre-incident side versus the incident response? Because incident response is still important. We can still, do a good job of keeping the damage down by responding fast, mitigation, which is, we've got to have it. But at the same time, if we didn't, imagine if we could just prevent some of these tragedies before it even happened. That's what we're talking about. We're reimagining what public safety and school safety looks like by equipping people to see the bigger picture with these at-risk individuals before they escalate and do something bad. And the thing is, that just for people listening in, this is real. It's not something that's just vaporware. This is something that's been in place now for 8 years, 8+ years. I mean, it's changed and evolved a lot, but we've had some really fantastic return on prevention successes, right? That have been fantastic, and our clients just love it. But it's just getting people to think a little differently. Think differently from that response and security to that prevention and first preventer type of approach.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, this is a general problem, right? Like if somebody's not feeling the pain right now, then it's kind of hard, especially at maybe a school where their decision-making process may not be the most efficient.
Everybody likes to think it'll never happen here. Yeah, people like to say it'll never happen here, right? Oh, that'll never happen here.
Yeah.
And that's the other problem we have is people don't think it's going to happen to them until it does, and then unfortunately we got to prevent these things. Just like today at the press conference, they were talking a lot about how we've got to prevent these things. Enough is enough, is what the police chief said, and I agree. We've just got to get people now to really start focusing on that prevention, pre-incident prevention side of things, and realizing that the data's out there. They've just got to get equipped to bring it all together. And puzzle pieces, however you want to look at it, but bring all those puzzle pieces together so we can see that bigger picture. Because it's possible. We're doing it.
Okay, another question. See, you may or may not know the answer to this, but say again, let's take a university, and let's say there's somebody what's the title of a person that you're talking to at a university?
Sometimes it's a safety person, sometimes it's legal. It's kind of different because there's really nobody in charge of first preventers at university, right? Because they don't really have that. They know who's in charge of their first responders, but they don't always know who's in charge of so that's kind of another barrier, but we're getting there. But sometimes it's a safety person, sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's an administrator. We've just got to kind of find that person who's sort of an early adopter, forward-looking person that knows, because this isn't necessary. This is a new category of solution, and so it's new for a lot of the universities, schools, businesses, communities, all the above.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we're talking to a university president. President's like, we are going to have a safe campus. What data do you think would be? They care about this. They care about prevention. What's like the most important data for them to get in front of them? Like, say they could have a dashboard or like an alert to their phone. Like, what's the most important data they would want to see?
I would say some of the most important data so far, and again, it's not one size fits all, but some of the most important data is how many lawsuits have they had and large settlements have they had where they've had maybe not tragedies per se, like a mass shooting type of tragedy, but maybe they've had, a hazing incident. Maybe they've had, and I'm not making light of hazing incidents, but I'm just saying something else, bullying, something like that, where they've had a lawsuit and it's cost them a few $1,000,000. And it's usually the costs are going up because the attorneys are seeing that all these pre-incident indicators and this data was scattered across their organization, in this case a university or a school or whatever. But the information was out there, and so the university is now liable because they didn't act on it. So there's that piece. Sometimes it's reputational, sometimes certainly it's safety. People but what pushes it over that sort of saying we want safety versus taking action is usually an event or some sort of reputational damage, some sort of.
Well, hold on. I'm assuming this person cares. This person cares. They saw their data. They're like, we don't want any more lawsuits. So to me, that's like that. They've already made that decision. There. What data do they want to know they want in their inbox to prevent it?
I think most of it is they just need to know that we exist, because they don't always know that there's a prevention solution. What they end up.
Well, and again, doing. That's not really the question though. Is forget Awarity for a second, because that's data that you want to know. But this university president, do I want to know how many people have submitted reports, or what are my key indicators that an incident's going to happen? What data do I want to?
Gotcha. Yeah. So definitely, like you said, a dashboard or some way of knowing what different types of incidents are taking place. What is the data that they can look at to see, okay, how many sexual assaults did we have? How many suicides did we have? How many overdoses did we have? How many,
Yeah.
things like that. Unfortunately, though, it's the same kind of the same problem is that those are all usually silo groups working on those. It's not a centralized approach, so a lot of that information is also scattered. Student affairs might have some of it. Counselors might have some of it. Their local university, most of them, not all, but most of them have like a police force. So the police force might have some of that information. Mental health might have some of that information, and so the information is all scattered. So it's very difficult for back to the president sometimes to even see all that information across a university, just because of the siloed approach that's in place today. And so, is it possible to gather? Oh, sure, they could probably try to gather it, but it's coming in the form of some have it in spreadsheets, some have it in emails, some have it in, maybe a database that they created of their own or whatever. And so it's not very easy for them to pull all that information together. And once they do pull it together, hopefully they can see some patterns and trends, but they don't always have the tools to like, okay, is this high or is this low compared to last quarter, last year, because I don't have the data from the previous years, necessarily to look at that. So the data they need, they don't always have, or it's difficult to get, put it that way. And then, trying to today, a lot of the focus is as soon as we have something bad happen, they want to add more guards or more cameras. Just again, more that security thought process. And so they use that data a lot of times to justify more security versus not really maybe understanding that there's a prevention solution available.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that. That like they don't even know. Maybe if I'm a university president, first thing I'm asking is like, what is happening in my university? They don't even know that. Like that's the data that I want. And then, like you said, trends and benchmarking. Like, how do I compare to other universities? Is this high or low? Like, if I'm way higher, we got to do something or whatever. Like, and then what do? Like, so that's interesting.
Well, and even if you look at a lot of the different universities have had a lot of different issues with their athletics, right? And athletics is kind of their separate silo, and they manage things. And I mean, you end up with something like Michigan State with the girls gymnastics team and all the bad stuff that went on there for years that was covered up in a silo and not shared. And $500 million later, that was the lawsuit, and a lot of really bad. There was even more than that, but that was the lawsuit. But a lot of bad PR and stuff too. So yeah, it's the silos that'll get you in the universities, and not just universities, but certainly since we're talking about universities, it's the silos that president can't always see into.
Yeah. So can you go in and tell a university president, hey, I can make you a dashboard that shows you all of your incidents that have happened?
Yeah, that's part of the process. Absolutely. We say we want to give you that ability to see what's going on, and not just see what's going on, but see also what's happened before. So we can start, if maybe there's more and more vaping going on that's turning into something worse, or bullying that becomes something worse. Or I mentioned earlier with me, if you can see the individuals, how, when I use myself as an example at least, how maybe I was being bullied, but now I'm the bully. So I've escalated, if you will. But you can start seeing those kinds of things with students. Today we've got protests going on in universities, we've got politics, we've got all kinds of other things too, that what's bubbling out there. I mean, think about it. When they have a protest, all these people show up. Well, somebody was sharing information with all these people. So that means they could have gotten ahead of it too at the same time, but they don't have a dashboard to see that.
Yeah, very interesting. Have you ever thought about making something like that freely available to a university, or is that too much effort? Maybe benchmarks.
Well, yeah, it's hard because a lot of universities do things so differently, and then
Yeah.
we've got and as much as I mean, this is the honest truth. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but you've got a lot of turf wars going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, you've got legal or HR and security and athletics, and they don't always cooperate very well with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me to come in, I mean, it's a great idea. Don't get me wrong, but for me to come in, even the president sometimes has struggles to get everyone to cooperate to where they would even trust to bring that information together.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a tragedy before it gets their attention to where we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to bring all that data together, it's not that hard per se. It is if you don't have the right tools, don't get me wrong. But I mean, if you have the right tools and the right way of being able to address all the different privacy, security, and all these other different things that they're concerned about, if you can address those, it's not as hard, as long as that's all built into it. But again, especially sometimes, if you have a tragedy, I don't want to say tragedies help because they don't help anybody, but I'm just saying sometimes those are the inflection point or the catalyst that pushes it forward, just like it's doing, unfortunately, today in Madison, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody thought anything like that would ever happen at a Christian church or a Christian school, I mean, and especially right before Christmas. So, it's a horrible thing, but it's going to make them think differently now.
Yeah, that's heavy, and I think.
Now you get to ring real heavy on your podcast here, but
This is
it's
keeping
data
it
is
real.
so important, and we just can't keep letting it be scattered and siloed and all over the place because it's just putting so many people at risk that don't need to be at risk.
Yeah, I love that, and honestly, I love to aim for an insight in these sessions, and my insight from this conversation is interesting. Like my own reaction at the start of the conversation when you start to talk about see something, say something, or like this data about other people, my reaction initially was like, oh, that's Big Brother, and kind of I had a little bit of an adverse reaction, but then digging into it, I had this insight that like, whoa, there's like this whole field of information that's like legal and people want to get it to the right person and it's still not getting there. So even if you don't even get close to like this Big Brother idea, there's just so much opportunity here to just use stuff in a responsible way to help prevent really bad things happening. So that's my.
And you're exactly right. And I'm glad you said that because there is a lot of people who think Big Brother, and Big Brother is, if we were going into people's accounts and breaking into them and, things like that, this is not that at all. This is all publicly available information that people observe every single day about other people who need help, whatever that help might be. Again, drugs, depression, the grievances they have, the hate they have, whatever it might be. It's all public. It's out there. Friends, family, mental health counselors, teachers, they see it. They can tell. They can see it in homework sometimes, the teachers can. We've seen that over and over and over again, where kids are basically looking for help. I mean, a lot of these kids are putting out, without saying help, they're saying help me. By putting out like a, homework and saying, I want to shoot up the school. They really don't. Most of them don't. But they're looking for help. And so if we can give, and that's what drives me, is that return on prevention. But if we can give people the tools where they can help other people without having to maybe do the help, but just getting the information into the funnel so we can get to the right people so they can get help. I mean, we can make each other a lot safer, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us. I've loved this conversation. Any final thoughts or questions?
I mean, if anybody's interested in this, please just reach out because I love to help. That's my passion, is to help. So, through you or through look me up, or, I wrote a book called First Preventers. Look that up. But please just reach out. Don't wait. Don't wait until something bad happens. it's too late. So I guess the final thought would be is, we can all help each other, but we've got to connect the dots. We've got to, connect the data, and it'll keep us all safer and keep more people alive, and that's what we want to do. So as much evil as there is out there, I always talk about disrupting evil. First preventers can disrupt evil, but we have a lot more good guys than evil doers. But we have to get the good people connected so we can, do our thing to help. And I guess that would be the final thought: is this, that we can do this. We know we can do this. We just got to take some different actions, different steps.
Yeah, I love that. So, yeah, thank you for joining.